Brandenburg, May 1945. The schoolhouse cellar was dark and cold. 40 children huddled on stone floors, where they had hidden for 3 weeks. Corporal James Mitchell descended the stairs with rations in his pack, flashlight cutting through the gloom. Then he stopped. In the center of the room, a single piece of bread sat on a wooden board. The children ages 4 to 14 sat in a perfect circle around it, waiting. The oldest girl held a ruler and a knife, measuring with mathematical precision. What Mitchell witnessed in the next 10 minutes would haunt him for 60 years, and redefine everything he thought he understood about human nature. The American forces had taken Brandenburg without significant resistance. The German military forces had withdrawn or surrendered. The city was a maze of damaged buildings and frightened civilians emerging from cellars and shelters where they had hidden during the final chaotic weeks of combat. Corporal James Mitchell, 24, from Iowa, was part of a civil affairs unit tasked with locating civilians in need of immediate assistance. His job was to search buildings, identify people requiring medical care or food, and coordinate with relief operations. It was exhausting work. Every structure held stories of suffering. Every face showed trauma. On May 15, 1945, a week after the formal surrender, Mitchell's unit was searching a damaged school building in Brandenburg's Eastern District. The main structure was partially collapsed, but the foundation appeared intact. Mitchell and Private Danny O'Connor from Boston investigated, checking for survivors or bodies that would need proper handling. They found the cellar entrance behind debris. Stairs descended into darkness. Mitchell called down in his basic German, "Is anyone there? We are American soldiers. We are here to help." Silence. Then a small voice, a girl's voice, responding in German, "We are children, 40 children. Please don't hurt us." Mitchell and O'Connor exchanged glances. 40 children? They descended carefully, flashlights sweeping the darkness. The smell hit them, first unwashed bodies, waste, fear. Then the light revealed them. Children. Everywhere, ranging from toddlers to teenagers, sitting on the stone floor, pressed against walls, staring at the Americans with eyes that had seen too much. They were filthy, emaciated, dressed in rags. Some shook with fear or cold. Others simply stared, beyond fear, in a state of shock. The oldest appeared to be a girl of about 14, standing protectively in front of the younger ones. She spoke in halting English. "We have been here 3 weeks, since the fighting came close. Our teachers told us to hide here. They said they would come back. They did not come back." Mitchell felt his stomach turn. 3 weeks? "What have you been eating?" "What we could find. There was food stored here initially. It is gone now." "Water?" "There is a pipe. We have water. But no food for, I think, 4 days now." O'Connor was already on his radio, calling for immediate assistance, medical personnel, food supplies, transport. Mitchell knelt to the girl's level. "What's your name?" "Greta. Greta Hoffman. I am the oldest. I have been taking care of them. You've done well, Greta. Help is coming. We're going to get you all out of here, get you fed and safe." Greta's composure cracked slightly. "Thank you. They are very hungry. The little ones especially. They cry sometimes, but I tell them to be quiet because we don't know who is above." Mitchell looked at the 40 faces staring at him. Some showed hope. Some showed nothing. He reached into his pack and pulled out his rations, chocolate bars, crackers, canned meat. He started handing them out, but Greta stopped him. "Wait, please wait. They're hungry. They need food. Yes, but not like this. We have a system." For fairness, while they waited for additional supplies, Mitchell watched what Greta called their system. She explained it carefully, as if describing something sacred. "When we first came here, we had food from the school storage, but not very much for 40 children. We realized quickly that if everyone took what they wanted, some would eat too much and others would starve. So we created rules. She gestured to the children, who were now arranging themselves in a specific pattern. Everyone sits in a circle. Whatever food we have goes in the center. I measure it. Then I divide it into exactly 40 equal portions. No one gets more. No one gets less. The youngest eat first, but everyone gets the same amount. How do you measure it exactly? Mitchell asked. Greta held up a wooden ruler and a kitchen knife. I measure, I cut precisely. I count. If it's bread, I measure the length and divide by 40. If it's something that can't be divided exactly, like a single potato, I cut it and weigh the pieces by feel until they balance. Mitchell stared at her. This 14-year-old girl had created a system of perfect egalitarian distribution in a cellar with no adults, managing 40 children through starvation by sheer force of will and mathematics. Show me, he said quietly. Greta nodded. She pulled something from a cloth, a single piece of bread, perhaps 8 inches long, hard and stale, but still bread. The last food they had. This is what remained this morning. I was saving it for tonight. But since you are here and help is coming, perhaps we should share it now. To give the children hope. She placed the bread on a wooden board in the center of the circle. The children's eyes fixed on it with an intensity that was painful to witness. None moved toward it. None reached out. They just watched, waiting. Greta took the ruler and laid it alongside the bread. 8 inches. She spoke to the children in German, explaining something. Mitchell caught enough to understand. 40 portions. Each will be exactly 0.2 inches. We will measure carefully. She took the knife and began cutting. Not roughly or quickly, but with absolute precision, marking each cut with the ruler, ensuring mathematical accuracy. The first slice a thin piece barely thicker than paper. She held it up to the light, checking that it matched her calculations. 0.2 inches, she announced, placing it on the board. Then she cut another, and another, each exactly the same thickness. The children watched in absolute silence. Mitchell felt his throat constrict. O'Connor, standing beside him, was openly crying. They were watching 40 starving children divide a single piece of bread with more precision and fairness than most adults could achieve with abundance. The process took 15 minutes. Greta cut slowly, carefully, ensuring each portion was exactly equal. When she finished, 40 tiny pieces lay arranged on the board, each one absurdly small, barely a mouthful, but each exactly the same as the others. Then Greta did something that broke Mitchell completely. She counted the pieces. 40. Perfect. But she took one her own portion and divided it into 40 more pieces. Tiny crumbs, really. She distributed these crumbs back into the other portions. Why did you do that? Mitchell asked, his voice rough. Because I am the oldest. I can endure hunger better than the small ones. So I take a little from my portion and give it to them. It's not much, but every crumb helps. She gestured to the youngest child, a girl perhaps 4 years old, who was holding her tiny slice of bread like it was precious treasure. That is Elsa. She is 4. She has not eaten in 4 days, but she waited her turn and took only her fair portion. She understands fairness even at 4 years old. The children began eating their portions, not frantically or quickly, slowly, savoring each microscopic bite, making it last, chewing thoroughly to extract maximum nutrition and satisfaction from minimal substance. None asked for more. None complained that the portions were too small. They accepted what they received with a grace that transcended their years. Mitchell watched a boy of about 6 take 20 minutes to eat his piece, holding it carefully, nibbling the edges, eyes closed in concentration, making it last as long as possible. When he finished, he licked his fingers to catch every crumb, then sat back with an expression that suggested he had just eaten a feast. How long have you been doing this? Mitchell asked Greta. This precise division? Since the 3rd day, when I realized our food would not last. At first, some children wanted more. Some tried to take extra. I had to be firm. I explained that fairness was survival, that if anyone took more, someone else would die. Once they understood that, they accepted the system. And it worked. For 3 weeks, no one cheated. No one. Because everyone could see that I measured exactly, that no one received special treatment. Even when Klaus, she gestured to a boy of about 8, even when Klaus found a can of food hidden in a corner, he brought it to the circle. We divided it into 40 portions. Everyone got equal shares. The trust comes from the fairness. While the relief supplies were en route, Mitchell sat with the children, distributing water from his canteen, talking with Greta about their ordeal. The story emerged gradually, pieced together from her account, and the fragments other children added. The school had been a shelter for children whose parents were gone taken for service, lost to bombing, disappeared into the chaos of war's end. The teachers had tried to care for them as the city emptied and fighting approached. When the battle reached Brandenburg, the teachers had moved all 40 children to the cellar, promising to return with supplies. They never came. Whether they were taken, harmed, or simply fled, no one knew. The children were alone. Greta, as the oldest, took command. She organized water collection from the pipe in the corner. She established bathroom protocols using a corner section with waste bucket. She created the food division system. She maintained hope and discipline, even as their situation grew desperate. "Weren't you scared?" Mitchell asked, terrified. "Every moment. But I couldn't show it. The little ones needed someone to be strong. So I pretended I wasn't afraid, even when I was. That's incredibly brave. No, brave would be not being afraid. I was just necessary. Someone had to do it, and I was the only one old enough." She explained the daily routine she had established. Morning gathering where she counted everyone, ensuring all 40 were healthy. Water distribution, each child got 3 cups daily, measured exactly. Lessons, Greta taught younger children basic mathematics and reading using scraps of paper and a pencil stub. Songs they sang together to maintain spirits. Prayer, even those who didn't believe prayed, because the ritual provided comfort. The hardest part was watching them get thinner, Greta said quietly. Seeing their faces change. Feeling my own body weaken. Knowing the food was running out, and not knowing if anyone would come. I tried to stay hopeful, but some days I thought we would all die here, that no one would find us until it was too late. But you kept going. What else could I do? Give up? Let them starve without trying? No. As long as I had breath, I would divide whatever food we found into 40 fair portions. Even if those portions got smaller and smaller. Even if they became almost nothing. Fairness gave us dignity. Without that, we were just animals fighting over scraps. Mitchell understood then what he was witnessing. This wasn't just survival. This was civilization maintained in its purest form, a system of justice and equality, enforced by a 14-year-old girl in a dark cellar where 40 children refused to abandon their humanity, even as they starved. 2 hours after the initial discovery, trucks arrived with supplies. Medical personnel descended into the cellar with flashlights, blankets, and food. The children were examined quickly. All showed signs of severe malnutrition and dehydration, but none were in immediate medical danger. The miracle was that they had survived this long with so little. Captain Robert Morrison, the medical officer, stood in the cellar watching his team work. Mitchell briefed him on what he'd witnessed, the division system, Rita's leadership, the mathematical precision of starvation. Morrison shook his head slowly. "I've been doing this for 3 years. I've seen combat wounds, disease, mass casualties. But I've never seen anything like this. 40 children maintaining perfect discipline and fairness while starving. It defies everything I know about human nature under extreme stress." "It shouldn't," Mitchell said. "It just shows that even children understand justice when they have to. Maybe especially children." The evacuation began. Children were carried out carefully, wrapped in blankets, given small amounts of food. Too much too quickly would be dangerous after prolonged starvation. They were transported to a temporary hospital facility where they could be properly fed and monitored as their bodies adjusted to nourishment. Greta refused to leave until all 40 children were out safely. She counted them as they were carried up the stairs, checking off names on a list she'd maintained throughout their ordeal. Only when the last child, Elsa, the 4-year-old, was safely out, did Greta allow herself to be helped up the stairs. At the top, she stumbled. Mitchell caught her. She was shaking adrenaline crash, relief, exhaustion, malnutrition all hitting at once. "It's over," Mitchell told her. "You did it. You kept them alive. All 40? She asked, her voice small and young for the first time. "All 40. Every single one." Greta collapsed against him and cried. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs of someone who had held everything together for 3 weeks and could finally let go. Mitchell held her while she shook, this teenage girl who had done what many adults could not maintain civilization in the cellar, kept 40 lives intact through fairness and determination. The story of the Brandenburg children spread quickly through the American forces in the region. Officers visited the hospital to meet Greta, to shake her hand, to tell her she had done something extraordinary. Journalists wanted interviews. Photographers wanted pictures of the brave German girl who saved 40 children. Greta refused most of it. She didn't want recognition. She just wanted to ensure her children, she thought of them as hers now, were safe and recovering. Mitchell visited the hospital daily. He brought supplies, helped coordinate care, but mostly he came to talk with Greta and the children to understand what had happened in that cellar. One afternoon, he found her in the ward, teaching Elsa and some other young children basic arithmetic using beans as counters. The children were laughing, healthy color returning to their faces as proper nutrition restored them. "You're still teaching," Mitchell observed. "They need education. Just because we suffered doesn't mean we should stop learning. You're remarkable, Greta." She looked uncomfortable. "I only did what was necessary. No, many people would have hoarded food, taken more for themselves. Let the weak die so the strong survived. You created justice instead. You divided everything exactly, ensuring everyone had equal chance of survival. That's not necessity, that's morality." Greta thought about this. Maybe. Or maybe I just couldn't bear the thought of choosing who deserved food more. So I chose fairness, because it was easier than choosing favorites. That's still morality. Perhaps even pure morality fairness, not from philosophy, but from the impossibility of being unfair. Over the following weeks, as the children recovered, their stories emerged more fully. Teachers documented what had happened. Psychologists assessed their mental states. Administrators worked to find homes or relatives for each child. 8 children had living relatives who claimed them. 15 were placed in orphanages being established in the American zone. 17 had no one parents dead or disappeared, no known family, nowhere to go. These became wards of the occupation authority, destined for institutional care. Greta was among the 17. Her parents had perished in an air raid in 1944. She had no siblings, no relatives willing to take her. At 14, she was in the difficult position of being too old for easy adoption, but too young to be independent. Mitchell couldn't accept this. After everything Greta had done, after saving 40 lives through sheer force of will and mathematical precision, she deserved better than an orphanage. He began making inquiries. Mitchell wrote to his parents in Iowa, explaining what had happened, describing Greta's actions, asking if there was any possibility of sponsorship or adoption. His mother, Martha Mitchell, wrote back quickly, "Dear James, your father and I have discussed this extensively. What this girl did is extraordinary. However, we are not young anymore. We are both over 60. We have the farm to manage. Taking in a 14-year-old German girl would be challenging for us. But we have an idea. Your sister Catherine and her husband Thomas have been trying to have children for years without success. They have discussed adoption. Perhaps they would be interested in Greta? We will write to them immediately. Mitchell's sister Catherine lived in Minneapolis, where her husband managed a hardware store. They were 32 and 34, established and stable, with a home but no children to fill it. When Martha Mitchell wrote explaining Greta's story, Catherine responded within a week. "Mother, Thomas and I would be honored to bring this girl to America, to give her a home and family." What she did in that cellar shows character that many adults lack. A child who can maintain fairness while starving, who can lead 40 children through crisis, who can sacrifice her own portion to help the weakest. This is someone we would be proud to call our daughter. Please tell James we will begin the necessary paperwork immediately. The adoption process for German children by American families was complex but not impossible. Requirements included documentation of the child's orphan status, psychological evaluation, approval from both American and German authorities, and sponsorship by the adopting family. Mitchell coordinated everything, working with military administration, German civilian officials, and his family back home. He explained the opportunity to Greta carefully, not wanting to pressure her, but wanting her to understand what was being offered. "They want to adopt you? Americans I have never met?" "Yes, my sister and her husband. They want a daughter. They know what you did in the cellar. They want to give you a home, a future, a family." Why would they do this for someone they've never met? Because what you did matters. Because you showed something about human nature that deserves recognition and reward. Because they re good people who want a child, and you deserve parents who will appreciate your character. Greta was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that revealed how young she still was, despite everything. "Would they really want me? Even knowing I'm German? Even after the war? They want you because of who you are, not despite where you're from." Character transcends nationality, Greta. Greta struggled with the decision for weeks. Leaving Germany meant leaving everything familiar, everyone she knew. The other children from the cellar, particularly the 17 orphans she lived with, were the closest thing to family she had. Abandoning them felt like betrayal. Mitchell arranged for her to talk with some of the children about her decision. She gathered the 17 orphans one afternoon in the hospital common room. "I have been offered adoption," she told them, "by an American family. They want me to go to America, to live with them." The children's reactions varied. Some were happy for her. Some were jealous. Little Elsa started crying. "Don't leave us. You're like our mother." Greta knelt beside her. "I'm not your mother, Elsa. I'm just an older sister who helped when you needed it. But you don't need me anymore. You have food and safety now. You'll all find homes. You'll all have futures." "But what about you?" asked Klaus, the 8-year-old. "Don't you deserve a future too?" "I don't know what I deserve. I just know that staying here means an orphanage and an uncertain future. Going to America means a family, education, opportunities. It feels selfish to take it when you don't have the same chance." One of the older boys, Friedrich, 14 like Greta, spoke up. "You're the one who kept us alive. If anyone deserves a good family, it's you. We would all be dead if you hadn't measured that bread so carefully. Take the opportunity. Make something of your life. That honors what we survived together." The others nodded agreement, even Elsa eventually. They understood that Greta's chance was rare, that refusing it would waste the miracle of her survival, that she deserved the future being offered. Greta made her decision. She would go to America. In August 1945, Greta Hoffmann boarded a ship in Bremen bound for New York. Mitchell accompanied the group of orphans being transported. For adoption or relocation, he'd been assigned to oversee their journey as part of his civil affairs duties. The night before departure, he visited the hospital one last time to check on the children who weren't leaving. The 17 orphans gathered to say goodbye to Greta. They had small gift drawings, a carved wooden bird Klaus had made, a braided bracelet from one of the girls. Elsa gave Greta the piece of bread she'd saved from that last day in the cellar. It was now rock hard, preserved unintentionally through dryness. "So you remember," Elsa said simply. Greta took it, tears streaming down her face. "I could never forget any of you. What we survived together." Friedrich gave her the ruler and knife she'd used for dividing the bread. "You saved us with these. Keep them. Remember that fairness saved 40 lives. The goodbye was heartbreaking. These children had been through war together, had survived starvation together, had maintained their humanity together. Now they were scattering to different futures, and the bonds forged in that cellar would stretch across oceans and years." On the ship, Greta stood at the rail, watching Germany disappear behind them. Mitchell joined her, offering silent company. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," she said quietly. "Why not?" "Because I survived and others didn't. Because I get this opportunity and they don't. Because leaving feels like forgetting. Surviving isn't something to feel guilty about. And leaving isn't forgetting. You'll carry those children with you always. What you did in that cellar, that becomes part of who you are forever. You proved that humans can maintain fairness, even in extremity. That's a lesson you'll carry to America and beyond. Do you really think what I did mattered? In the scope of everything, the war, the destruction, the millions who died, does 40 children dividing bread actually matter?" Mitchell looked at her seriously. "Those 40 children are alive because of you. They have futures because of you. You showed them that civilization doesn't collapse as long as someone insists on fairness. That matters more than almost anything else I've seen in this war. Battles destroy. You preserved. That's the difference between making history and making meaning." Catherine and Thomas. Brennan met Greta at the dock in New York in September 1945. She was thin, still showing signs of malnutrition despite months of proper feeding, wearing clothes donated by the relief organization. She carried a small bag containing everything she owned, including a piece of hardened bread and a ruler. Catherine approached cautiously, aware that this teenage girl had been through trauma beyond imagination. "Greta? I'm Catherine. This is Thomas. We're so happy you're here." Greta looked at them, these strangers who had agreed to become her parents, and something inside her broke. She collapsed into Catherine's arms and sobbed. Not the contained tears of someone maintaining composure, but the deep wailing of a child who had finally reached safety after endless fear. Catherine held her, this German girl who would become her daughter, and cried too. "You're safe now. You're home." The adjustment to American life was difficult. Greta struggled with English, with cultural differences, with the abundance of food after months of starvation. She had nightmares about the cellar, about measuring bread into impossible portions, about children crying from hunger. But the Brennans were patient. Catherine taught her English. Thomas helped her with American customs. They enrolled her in school, where her mathematical precision and serious nature earned respect, if not friendship initially. One evening a month after arriving, the Brennans invited Mitchell, who was passing through Minneapolis on his way to discharge, to dinner. He wanted to see how Greta was adjusting. She showed him her room, small but warm, with a real bed, a desk, shelves for books. On the desk sat the ruler and knife from the cellar, displayed like sacred relics. "You kept them," Mitchell observed. "I'll always keep them. They remind me what humans can do when they choose fairness over selfishness." "And the bread?" Greta opened a drawer. The hardened piece of bread sat wrapped in cloth. "I look at it sometimes, when I feel overwhelmed by how much I have now. It reminds me that I survived with almost nothing. That 40 of us survived by sharing almost nothing perfectly. It makes my current problems feel smaller." Over dinner, the Brennans asked Mitchell about the other children. What had happened to them? Were they being cared for? "Most found homes or relatives eventually," Mitchell reported. "A few are still in orphanages, but they're being fed and educated. They survived, thanks to Greta. Every single one of those 40 children lived. Catherine looked at her new daughter. What you did was incredible. You know that, right? Greta shrugged uncomfortably. I just did what seemed fair. That's what makes it incredible, Thomas said. You saw the fair solution and implemented it, even when taking more for yourself would have been easier. That's integrity most adults can't manage. Greta Brin, she took her adoptive parents' surname, graduated high school in 1949 with honors in mathematics. She attended the University of Minnesota, studying economics with focus on resource distribution and game theory. Her senior thesis was titled Fairness Under Scarcity, Distribution Theory in Extreme Conditions. She married in 1954 a kind man named Robert Chun, a Chinese-American engineer whose parents had faced their own discrimination. Together they raised 3 children in suburban Minneapolis, living ordinary lives marked by quiet integrity. But Greta never forgot the cellar. She kept the ruler, knife, and bread in a box in her closet. Sometimes she would take them out and remember Klaus and Elsa and Friedrich and the others. Remember the weight of responsibility. Remember the mathematics of survival. In 1965, she was invited to speak at a conference on ethics and economics. She told the story publicly for the first time 40 children. 1 piece of bread, perfect mathematical division, maintaining equality in the face of starvation. The audience sat in silence as she described measuring 0.2-inch portions, distributing her own share as extra crumbs for the youngest children, maintaining fairness as a bulwark against chaos. People often ask me why I divided the bread so precisely, she concluded. Why not just break it roughly and hand out pieces? The answer is that precision created trust. When every child could see that I measured exactly, that no one received special treatment, they trusted the system. They accepted their tiny portions without complaint because they knew everyone else received the same. Fairness wasn't just moral, it was practical. It kept us alive. A professor in the audience asked, but wasn't such extreme equality unfair in another way? You were older, doing more work, shouldering more responsibility. Didn't you deserve more food? Greta smiled. I survived, didn't I? All 40 of us survived. If I had taken more for myself, perhaps I would have been slightly healthier, but the youngest might have died. What would my extra strength matter if it came at the cost of Elsa's life? True fairness means everyone gets equal chance at survival, not equal reward for contribution. The speech was published in academic journals. It became required reading in some ethics courses. Greta's story illustrated principles that philosophers debated abstractly. Here was concrete proof that humans could maintain justice even under extreme deprivation. In 1985, 40 years after the war, a German organization contacted Greta. They were organizing a reunion of the Brandenburg cellar children. Would she attend? She flew to Germany for the first time since leaving as a teenager. The reunion was held in Brandenburg, in a new school built on the site of the old one. 23 of the original 40 children attended. Some had died over the decades. Others couldn't be located, but 23 came. They were all middle-aged now, in their 40s and 50s. But when they saw each other, they became children again. The hugs, the tears, the memories flooding back. Klaus was there, a teacher now. Elsa had become a nurse. Friedrich ran a small business. They gathered in a circle instinctively, without planning it. Someone had brought bread. They placed it in the center, and suddenly they were back in the cellar, waiting for Greta to measure and divide. Greta knelt beside the bread, overwhelmed with memory. I can't believe you arranged this. We never forgot, Klaus said, what you did for us, how you kept us alive, how you taught us that fairness mattered more than survival instinct. We wanted to thank you. I don't need thanks. I just did what seemed necessary. No, Elsa said gently. You did what was right, even when it was hard. That's different from necessary. You chose to divide fairly when you could have taken more for yourself. You chose to give from your own portion to help the youngest. You chose civilization over survival. That choice saved us. They shared the bread not in 0.2-inch portions this time, but in generous pieces, laughing as they ate, marveling at the abundance they now had compared to that desperate time 40 years earlier. Afterward, they walked to a memorial that had been erected on the site of the old cellar, a plaque commemorating the 40 children who had survived through fairness and determination. Greta read the inscription. In this cellar, 40 children survived 3 weeks without food, maintaining perfect equality in distribution, proving that human dignity persists even in extremity. May we remember their example. She traced the words with her fingers, tears running down her face. This was her legacy. Not wealth or fame, but proof that fairness was possible, even when circumstances demanded selfishness. That children understood justice when adults forgot it. That measuring bread precisely could be an act of love. Greta Chun died in 2018 at 87. Her obituary mentioned her work as an economist, her family, her contributions to ethics education. But it led with the story of the Brandenburg Cellar 40 children, one piece of bread, 0.2-inch portions measured with mathematical precision. At her funeral, her children spoke about the lessons she'd taught them, about fairness as the foundation of civilization, about the importance of precision in creating trust, about dividing resources equally rather than by perceived merit, about sacrificing from your own portion to help those weaker. Klaus attended 90 years old now, the last survivor of the cellar children besides Greta. He spoke haltingly about what that experience had meant. I was 8 years old, starving in a cellar, watching a 14-year-old girl measure bread into 40 equal pieces. Each piece was almost nothing, barely a mouthful. But each was exactly the same. That precision saved us. Not just physically, it saved us morally. It taught us that even in the darkest moments, we could choose fairness over survival instinct. That lesson shaped my entire life. He held up a photograph from a reunion in 1985. 23 middle-aged adults standing in a circle. Bread in the center, Greta kneeling beside it with a ruler, everyone laughing. This is what survived. Not just 40 lives, but the principle that humans can maintain justice even when starving. Greta gave us that. She measured bread with a ruler and taught us about human dignity. Among Greta's possessions, her children found the box she'd kept all these years. The ruler, worn smooth from handling. The knife, blade dull now. The piece of bread, petrified with age, but intact. And a letter she'd written, but never sent, addressed to the children of Brandenburg. Dear Klaus, Elsa, Friedrich, and all the others. I think about the cellar often. About measuring that bread into 40 equal portions. About your patience and trust as I divided what little we had. About how you accepted your tiny shares without complaint because you knew everyone received the same. What we did in that cellar was more than survival. It was proof that civilization doesn't require abundance. It requires commitment to fairness. We had almost nothing, but we divided it perfectly. That precision was an act of faith in human dignity. I hope you carried that lesson into your lives. I hope you remembered that fairness is possible even in scarcity. That equality doesn't require wealth, just determination. That measuring carefully and dividing precisely creates trust that no amount of abundance can match. I hope you taught your children what we learned together, that humans can choose justice even when circumstance demands selfishness. That we survived not because we were strong, but because we were fair. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for accepting your portions without complaint. Thank you for proving that even children understand something many adults forget, that we are only human when we insist on treating each other humanely. With love and gratitude, Greta, the letter was framed and donated to the memorial in Brandenburg, where it hangs beside the plaque commemorating the 40 children who survived through fairness. The story endures because it captures something essential about human nature, not our capacity for cruelty, which war demonstrates constantly, but our capacity for justice, which emerges most clearly in extremity. 40 children dividing a single piece of bread into 40 equal portions, maintaining civilization in a cellar, choosing fairness over survival instinct. That choice, made by a 14-year-old girl with a ruler and a knife, proved that human dignity doesn't collapse under pressure. It transforms. It becomes more precise, more deliberate, more consciously chosen. And in that deliberate choice lies hope that even in our darkest moments, we can measure carefully, divide fairly, and maintain our humanity. 1 piece of bread, 40 children, 0.2 inches each. Perfect mathematical equality enforced by a girl who understood that civilization was a choice she could make every day, even while starving. That was the lesson that made soldiers weep. Not just the image of children so desperate that a sliver of bread was treasure, but the reality that those children maintained perfect fairness even in that desperation, that they chose equality over advantage, that they proved justice was possible even when survival was uncertain. Greta's ruler sits in a museum now, the knife beside it, the bread in a sealed case. Artifacts of a moment when humanity faced its own nature and chose the better path. When children taught adults that civilization is measured not in abundance, but in how we divide scarcity. And somewhere in Minneapolis, Greta Thunberg's grandchildren tell their children about their grandmother, who once saved 40 lives by measuring bread into 40 equal pieces, who proved that fairness was more than philosophy, it was survival itself, who showed that the human capacity for justice survives even starvation. That story echoes still, a reminder in an unequal world that equality is always possible if we insist on it with sufficient precision. That measuring carefully and dividing fairly creates bonds that abundance cannot match. That sometimes the most important thing isn't having enough, but ensuring that whatever you have is shared exactly. 40 children, 1 piece of bread, 0.2 inches each. Perfect equality in the face of starvation. That's the measure of humanity.